Detroit mornings begin with a familiar sound, the gentle lapping of Lake Michigan against the shore, a whisper that never ends. The scent of young pine trees wafts through the half-open window, mixed with a thin, chilly mist, and I shiver. I am Anna Carter, 27, a night nurse in a residential care facility. My eyes are dark not only from lack of sleep, but also from a lingering worry about my mother, a constant rain-soaked unease. In my mind, I pictured the rustic cabin nestled in the pines, the golden sunlight on the sparkling lake, the breathtakingly peaceful scene Laura had described. Lake Michigan. The name evoked dreams of escape, of a quiet moment in the suffocating hospital grind, in the sleepless nights caused by my mother, Susan's, persistent cough. A dream of a place where I could escape the feeling of being left behind that I had become so accustomed to in this family. Anna, what do you think of this house? Isn't it beautiful? Laura's voice came from the sofa, pulling me out of my thoughts. She was staring at her phone, her face radiant as if she was preparing for a fancy party, not a so-called family reunion vacation. Laura, 31, an event planner, is the center of attention wherever she goes. She has a vibrant, magnetic energy that everyone seems to gravitate toward. But along with that, there is a familiar, tiresome irresponsibility, something that I, her quiet, reliable younger sister, know all too well. Well, it's nice, I said hesitantly. But what about Mom? Have you checked to see if there's a hospital nearby? And her diet, is there a kitchen to cook in? My mother had heart disease, and although my father, Tom, had always been a loving husband, neither he nor Laura seemed to bother with the most essential details of her health. From scheduling appointments to buying medications to planning low-salt diets, it all fell to me, the family nurse, to always be reasonable. Laura didn't even look up. Oh, Anna, we'll see when we get there. Who brings up the hospital on vacation? Relax, Mom's going to be fine. There was a hint of irritation in her voice, as if I was ruining her good mood. My mother sat next to me, smiling weakly. Laura's right. Just relax, I'm fine. My father nodded, his eyes still glued to the TV screen. They had always pampered Laura, ignoring her flaws with excuses like artistic or free-spirited. And me? I was the reliable child, the one who always thought ahead, always took charge. When Laura suggested the vacation, I felt a sense of relief, a glimmer of hope. I imagined a real vacation, one where everyone could relax, talk, and I could escape, if only for a little while, from the role of caregiver. But then that familiar feeling came back, of being taken for granted, of being used. Anna, can you help me find some more activities in that area? I'm dead busy, there are tons of events waiting for me, Laura said, smiling brightly as if it were a favor I should take on. And then, from finding a cabin, making an itinerary, looking up the nearest medical facility, to planning a suitable menu for my mother, everything fell on my shoulders. A vacation that was supposed to be a healing vacation turned into another project that I was forced to take on, once again. I opened my laptop. The rhythm of typing echoed, mixed with the sound of the TV my father was watching, and Laura's shrill laughter from the living room. My chest gradually became heavy. I longed for recognition, for someone to take the initiative to share this responsibility. But perhaps I would always be the shadow behind. The person standing behind the scenes, silently pulling the curtains, adjusting the light so that others could shine. I felt like I was trapped in a cramped room where responsibilities piled up and escapes disappeared. Would this vacation really bring the connection I hoped for? Or would it be just another act, with me still doing all the work behind the scenes? I sighed. I would try anyway, for my mother, and for the faint hope that one day I wouldn't have to carry it all, alone. I had spent more than weeks preparing for this vacation. Months. It wasn't a matter of hitting the Airbnb button and letting things happen. Every detail, from the soft feather pillows to the medicine bottles stowed in the right drawer, carried a silent prayer. When it came to my mother's health, nothing was small. I had scrutinized each cabin, read every review, checked each location against a satellite map to make sure the distance to the nearest hospital was as short as possible. I called the clinic in the small town on Lake Michigan, asking about emergency procedures, a list of cardiologists, and the availability of emergency medications. Worst case scenarios played out in my head, moments where every second counted. And in those tense fantasies, the only thing that kept me grounded was knowing that I had done everything I could to protect my mother, even if no one else seemed to notice. At times, it felt more like I was planning an expedition than a vacation. The to-do list went on and on. Mom's medications, her blood pressure monitor, low-sodium snacks, easy-to-digest foods. I even planned out each day's menu in advance. Oatmeal for breakfast, grilled fish with greens for dinner, everything carefully thought out to fit her strict diet. I held on to a simple belief. If I prepared well enough, maybe everything would go smoothly. That we could truly enjoy our time together, without worries, without interruptions from little incidents, with only moments of peace and warmth, a rare gift in the midst of a busy life. While I was burying myself in health and travel websites, Laura would send me messages like, "Why don't you try fishing on the lake? I hear the fish are huge," or, "Anna, don't forget your bikini. The lake is gorgeous." Her suggestions were always lively and energetic, but completely out of touch with the reality of my job. I tried to delegate. "Laura, can you help me find some vegan restaurants nearby? Or pick up some organic snacks for Mom?" All she got was a shrug emoji, followed by a half-hearted promise. "Yeah, I'll see." And of course, Laura's "see you later" always meant forget it. My parents? They loved me in their own way, but they pampered Laura to the point where all the burden fell on me. "Anna is my best daughter," my mother would say. "I trust Anna to take care of everything." That was both a compliment and a silent burden. My father was more straightforward. He just nodded when I presented my plans, occasionally adding something like, "Let Anna do it. She always does the best." They trusted me so much that they didn't bother with the details, as if I was always ready to take care of everything, and I accepted that role without complaint. But the more I prepared, the more I felt a conflict growing inside me. I craved recognition, not just for what I did, but for who I was. I wanted to see my parents ask questions, to see Laura share the burden. Instead, I felt like an invisible supporter, a nameless shadow in my own family. All my dedication, all my silent sacrifices seemed to be taken for granted. There were times when I wondered, am I being taken advantage of? Do they really care about what I am trying to do? These questions kept ringing in my head, tearing me between two extremes. On the one hand, I wanted to continue to shoulder the responsibility, not to put my mother at any risk. But on the other hand, I also wanted to speak up, to be seen fairly, but I was afraid. Afraid of offending people. Afraid of disturbing the fragile harmony we were trying to maintain. But then, every time I think of my mother, of that fragile yet warm smile, all the negative feelings inside me recede. I tell myself, I am doing this for my mother. No matter how much or how little someone contributes to this holiday, no matter how much or how little someone understands, the only thing that matters is bringing her joy and safety. I still held on to a lingering hope that when we got there, when we lived together, experienced together, maybe something would change. Maybe Laura would learn to empathize and share. Maybe my parents would recognize the silent efforts I had never spoken about. That hope, as fragile as a thread hanging in the air, was enough to keep me going. I believe it. Or rather, I have to believe it, with all the sincerity and love of a girl who has never stopped trying. That morning, I woke up in the mist. The house was quiet except for the steady ticking of the wall clock, a silent countdown of waiting. I quietly reviewed my packing list, my hand gently stroking each item I had packed the night before. Mother's medicine, a warm towel, and the ash-colored sweater she loved to wear when she traveled. Every detail had to be perfect. I had calculated that we would leave at 6 a.m., in time to avoid the early morning traffic jams, and most importantly, so that Mother could rest comfortably during the long journey. But when the clock struck 6, my parents were already sitting in the living room. Mom was wearing an old sweater, her hand resting on the medicine bag I had prepared the day before, her eyes gentle but quiet. Dad sat beside her, looking pensively out the window. I had carefully placed a kettle of hot water at her feet, along with some apple slices and some soft crackers, in case she got hungry on the way. Everything was ready, except for Laura. I looked at my watch. Sector 6:15, then 6:30. A feeling of unease crept into my chest, like a cold finger lightly touching the back of my neck, making me shrink back in silence. "Where is Laura?" my father asked, his voice patient but with a hint of confusion. My mother turned to look at the door, her face slightly worried. "She must be sleeping. Anna, go and get her." I sighed. I had expected this. I had reminded Laura several times last night, even set an alarm for her. But with Laura, the concept of on time seemed to be a suggestion, never a rule. When I knocked on the door, all that answered was a tired grunt. It was nearly 2 hours later, when the sun was high in the sky and the traffic was starting to pick up, that Laura appeared, her hair disheveled, her eyes still sleepy. "Oh, sorry, I forgot to set the alarm." She yawned as if being nearly 2 hours late was no big deal. My parents just laughed. "It's okay, just take your time." I felt a surge of anger rise in my chest, but I tried to suppress it. It was late anyway. In the car, Laura immediately took the front seat, the spot I had reserved for Mom so she could stretch her legs more comfortably. She quickly began to talk about her latest event projects, her difficult clients, and the unique ideas she had come up with. Her voice boomed, filling the entire space of the car as if this entire trip was just a stage for her to perform. "Last week, I held a product launch party for a big cosmetics company. Did you know? They were blown away by my fairy garden concept." Laura excitedly told her father, not realizing that her mother was leaning her head back on the chair, her eyes closed from exhaustion. I sat in the back seat next to my mother, feeling the initial excitement of the trip slowly fade. Instead, there was a dull tension, like a thin wire being pulled ever so slightly. Every 30 minutes, I would sneak out the mini blood pressure monitor and carefully wrap it around her arm. "Are you feeling tired anywhere? Are you thirsty?" I would whisper, my eyes never leaving the display. She would just shake her head, occasionally opening her eyes and smiling reassuringly. "I'm fine, honey. Just relax." Laura continued to tell her story, completely oblivious to her mother's condition. Occasionally, she would turn around and ask, "Do you want to listen to some music?" But without waiting for a reply, she would immediately turn on one of her favorite upbeat songs. I felt as if I was caught between two worlds. One was my mother, who needed to be protected. The other was Laura, who lived in her own world, carefree to the point of being insensitive. "We're almost to Grand Rapids, so we should stop for lunch," I said, trying to cut into Laura's endless chatter. I'd done some research beforehand to find a few restaurants that had healthy menus that would fit Mom's diet. "Oh my gosh, Anna, why do you have to plan what you eat? Just eat wherever you go." Laura frowned. My father nodded in agreement. "She's right. Just find a roadside restaurant." I looked at my mother. She looked tired, paler than usual. "You need to eat regular meals and foods that are easy to digest," I explained, trying to stay calm. I know. Just follow this difficult nurse," Laura muttered, not looking up from her phone. The first obstacle had appeared, and it was no small one. Laura's carefree attitude, her dismissiveness of my mother's well-being, was slowly unraveling the plans I had worked so hard to make. It was more than an inconvenience. It was a stark and painful reminder that there was an irreconcilable difference between us. One lived in a world of pressure and responsibility, the other in a bubble of her own carefree self. And I, as always, am the one who suffers the consequences of that disparity. We stopped in Grand Rapids, a charming little city like a neatly folded handkerchief on a map, nestled among the lush green foliage of summer. "Mom, I found a really cute place to eat here," I said, my voice light as a breeze, holding the phone out to her. The screen showed a picture of a fresh salmon salad next to a steaming bowl of vegetable soup. The colors were soft and warm, strangely comforting. "They have this. You might like it. It's light and nutritious." The shop I chose was nestled in a quiet street with soft yellow lights and red geraniums hanging in front of the porch. A clean, cozy place, enough to make my mother feel secure. "Come on, Anna, I'm starving. Let's find a fast food place," Laura whined. She had dragged us past at least 3 cafes, complaining about how slow we were moving. Without waiting for my reply, Laura had already walked towards a roadside stall where the delicious smell of fried food was wafting through the air. My parents, as usual, said nothing. They just looked at me, their eyes saying, "Indulge, Laura." Finally, I gave in. We walked into a diner, a place filled with the smell of grease and loud pop music. The menu was heavy with fries, burgers, and fries. A heavy feeling gripped my chest. "Grilled chicken salad, Mom. Or vegetable soup," I suggested gently, trying to steer her toward the healthiest option possible. "Oh, look at this fried chicken. It's so delicious," Laura exclaimed, pointing to the giant plate of fried chicken on the table next to her. "Try it, Mom. It's been a long time since you've had this." My heart was pounding. "Laura, you can't eat that. Too much fat, too much salt, it's bad for your heart." I tried to keep my voice calm, but the impatience was evident in my eyes. My mother looked back and forth between Laura and me, her eyes hesitant and hungry. "Okay, I guess one bite won't hurt." "No, Mom," I insisted. "You know your diet. I've prepared a very detailed menu for you." I turned to the waitress and ordered a vegetable salad with grilled chicken breast and vinaigrette dressing, no salt added. Laura suddenly burst out laughing. "Anna, why are you so serious? I'm not a child. Why do you have to control me so much? You're such a difficult nurse." Her voice was so loud that several nearby customers turned around. My face felt hot as if I had been slapped. "I'm just worried about Mom's health, Laura," I replied softly, my voice low, trying to swallow the self-pity that was rising. "Why worry so much? Maybe it's because you're so stressed that Mom is even more tired." Laura shrugged, as if there was nothing to worry about. My father, Tom, sensing the tension, quickly interjected, "Come on, you two. Eat up. You're having fun and you're arguing all the time." His gaze shifted toward me, a gaze that was both tired and reproachful, as if I was the one who was messing up the afternoon. My mother remained silent, her face bowed. A lump rose in my throat. What had I done wrong? Hadn't I just wanted to protect my mother? Yet in Laura's eyes, and my parents', I was the one controlling, the one ruining the mood, the one ruining the fun. Laura's indifference to my mother's health and the way she openly mocked my silent efforts over the months made a chilling truth gradually emerge. She doesn't understand. Doesn't want to understand, or worse, doesn't even try to understand. For Laura, it was all about comfort and instant pleasure. As long as she was happy, everything else, including the risk of a heart attack, became negligible. I ate my salad in silence. It was so bland that each piece of vegetable slid reluctantly down my throat, stuck in a chest already crowded with things no one wanted to hear. I looked at my mother. She was eating her salad too, slowly and reluctantly, occasionally glancing at Laura's plate of fried chicken, a glance that was fleeting, but full of regret. Maybe Mom was feeling awkward too. Maybe she understood and was trying to follow what I was preparing, knowing it came from a place of love. But no one said it out loud. I wanted to speak up, to explain, to be understood, that I was doing it all out of concern, not control. But then I kept it all inside. For what? When no one was really listening. Still the familiar image. Nurse Anna. Always correct in the books, but out of place in family meals. Always seen as too strict, too principled, with countless shoulds and shouldn'ts. The rift between Laura and me, between care and innocence, between responsibility and indulgence, was no longer a small crack. It had turned into a deep, smoldering chasm, and perhaps it would not be easy to fill. After a heavy lunch that felt like a stone in my stomach, the air in the car was thick and quiet, as if someone had locked all the windows of my mind. Laura had her headphones on, her eyes absent-mindedly looking outside, but her mind was clearly drifting off into a world of its own, a world not meant for me. Occasionally, she swayed gently to the music that only she could hear, her lips moving secret words. My parents sat quietly in the back, their heads tilted slightly to opposite sides, both of them falling asleep amidst the steady rocking of the car. My mother, who had always tried to maintain the delicate balance between the two children, seemed to have given up. Her face relaxed, her eyelids heavy, looking tiredly serene. And my father, who had always been accustomed to silence, was now just a vague reflection in the rearview mirror. I drove, eyes on the long road ahead, feeling a sense of loneliness both old and new, like it had always been there. Only now I was calm enough to feel it clearly. As we got closer to Lake Michigan, thoughts of family injustice became more vivid. Was I being too sensitive? Or was I really being taken advantage of? As the car turned onto the small dirt road leading to the resort, the scene before me looked like it had just stepped out of a postcard. A lovely wooden house nestled among tall pine trees, its wide porch facing the sparkling lake in the afternoon light. The chirping of birds and the gentle sound of waves lapping against the shore were like a gentle symphony of nature. In that moment, a fragile ray of hope flashed through me. Perhaps in this peaceful place, the tension would melt away, and we could become a real family. Before the car could stop completely, Laura jumped up and exclaimed, "Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. I have to get a room with a lake view." Then she practically ran inside, leaving me with my luggage and my mother slowly getting out of the car. "Are you tired, Mom? Be careful not to fall." I quickly supported her, holding her bag in one hand and the medicine box and blood pressure monitor in the other. My father had just stepped out of the car, standing still, admiring the lake view, completely ignoring the pile of luggage waiting to be cleared away. As I led my mother inside, Laura quickly claimed the largest room, with its own balcony and a direct view of the lake. From inside came her joyful voice. "This room is so beautiful, Anna. You choose this one." My mother looked at me, her eyes full of pity. "Okay, just choose a room that's convenient for taking care of me." I nodded. Without having to guess, I knew where I would be. The small room was tucked away in the back with windows overlooking the parking lot. No balcony, no lake view. But at least it was big enough to hold my mother's suitcase of medicine and medical equipment. I quietly arranged everything. The blood pressure pills, the inhalers, the handheld nebulizer. I checked and rechecked, making sure everything was within reach in case of an emergency. While I was busy worrying, Laura's laughter rang out from the living room. She turned on the music, took a selfie with the lake, and live streamed brightly. "This is my family vacation. It's so wonderful." My father sat on the sofa, reading the newspaper attentively, occasionally looking up at the lake with satisfaction. My mother, after lying down for a while, also sat on the porch, letting her gaze wander into the peaceful space. I stood still for a moment, realizing the injustice was as clear as the afternoon sunlight slanting through the leaves. Laura always got priority, always got the good part. And me? I was the one who took care of things, shouldered the burden, silently handled everything, but was the one most easily forgotten. "Anna, can you make me some celery juice? I'm thirsty." Mom called from the porch. "Okay, give me a moment," I said, and turned to the kitchen, taking out the juicer. As I prepared, I glanced out the window. Laura was posing by the lake, her smile radiant and carefree. My father was sipping coffee, his eyes reflecting a calm joy. I suddenly realized, no matter how carefully I prepared, how much I sacrificed, my role was always behind the scenes. The person standing in the dark, adjusting everything to light up the stage, but no one remembered that silent hand. Does this vacation really change anything? Is there a turning point, a bonding, or just another act in a nicer setting? I don't know. But somewhere inside me, the soft but never shut down part still wants to believe that at some point my presence will be recognized, that I am not just a support, but the core that keeps this family together. And that, on this journey, I will also find what I have always longed for: balance. I swallowed my feelings of self-pity, took a deep breath, and returned to what I was doing, preparing a glass of juice for my mother, as a habit, as a silent love that didn't need to be called out by name. The next morning, I woke up in the middle of the night. The light had not yet touched the ground, but the characteristic chill of early morning by Lake Michigan crept between my fingers, gently reminding me that I was far from the city. Outside the window, the chirping of birds rang out in waves, like wordless but warm songs. The rustling of pine needles joined the sound, creating a harmony so gentle that I just wanted to stand still for that moment. Do nothing. Just breathe and listen. I got out of bed quietly and started preparing breakfast for my mother, oatmeal with fresh fruit, accompanied by a cup of warm herbal tea. I knew she needed a light, easy to digest breakfast, enough to fuel her for the little journey I had meticulously planned. As I finished serving breakfast, my parents woke up. Anna, you're such a clever girl. My mother smiled softly, her voice weak but full of affection. My father nodded, sipping the coffee I'd made, his face showing satisfaction. The morning was peaceful, except for one thing: Laura's absence. She was still fast asleep, her soft snores coming from the room with the best view of the lake. Laura must be asleep. Let's eat first, I said, trying to quell the growing irritation. My plan was to take a light walk along the lake after breakfast, on a smooth trail I'd scouted out beforehand. I wanted Mom to get some fresh air and moderate exercise, essential for her failing health. But it was almost 9 o'clock and Laura still hadn't woken up. Mother was getting impatient. Anna, go wake her up. We'll be late for our morning walk, she said. I let out a sigh, went upstairs and knocked on Laura's door. Laura, wake up. It's morning and we're going for a walk. There was only a grunt in response. I knocked harder. Finally, the door opened a crack and Laura stumbled out, her hair disheveled and her eyes still sleepy. What is it, Anna? Why are you making so much noise? I was having a nice dream, she mumbled, looking annoyed. It's almost 9. You're going to ruin all of Mom's plans. She needs to go for a walk before the sun gets too hot. I tried to keep my cool, but my irritation was starting to build. Reluctantly, Laura ate breakfast and got dressed. The hike I had been planning was delayed by nearly 2 hours. When we finally set off, the sun was high in the sky and the heat was unbearable. I kept an eye on my mother, reminding her to drink water regularly and not to overdo it. Are you tired, Mom? Let's rest on that bench, I asked, seeing her start to pant. It's okay, I'm fine. Mom tried to smile, but I could see the sweat on her forehead. I stopped, took out the heart rate monitor, and gently placed it on her wrist. Her heart rate was faster than normal. We should go back, Mother. It's sunny, I said firmly. Laura, Father, let's go back. Laura was walking ahead, taking pictures with her phone. She turned around, looking annoyed. What is it, Anna? We've only walked a short distance and you want to go back? You haven't even taken a single satisfactory photo yet. Mommy's tired, Laura. Her health is more important than your picture. I couldn't hide the harshness in my voice. My father walked over, looked at my mother, and said gently, Okay, if you're tired, let's go home. Laura, don't put any more pressure on Anna. We walked back to the cabin. I supported my mother, holding her thin arm, my eyes glued to my smartwatch, each heartbeat flashing like a silent warning. Behind me, Laura kept muttering, lamenting that vacation ruined. Her voice was small, but it was like a thorn stabbing into my mind, sharp and persistent. Her irresponsibility not only upset my carefully prepared plans, but also placed an invisible burden on my shoulders. The burden of worry, of duty, of silent bearing. Each of Laura's careless actions was like a small cut, forcing me into the position of someone who had to constantly balance between harsh weather, rugged terrain, and even the indifferent coldness of my own family. Fatigue, both physical and mental, began to creep into every corner of my will, silently gnawing at my remaining patience. The air around me gradually became thick, and each step on the slope back to the cabin suddenly became several times heavier. That afternoon, I was carefully mixing medicine for my mother after lunch when I heard Laura's voice from the living room. Come out for a bit, Anna. Some new friends I met are asking you out. I paused for a moment. Who is this, Laura? Where are you going? What time are you leaving? I pressed, a sense of unease rising like an undercurrent. Since we arrived, Laura had been spending a lot of time on her phone. I had a vague idea that she had been connecting with strangers in the area, and that worried me. Oh, Anna, what a lot of questions. I'm just going out for a bit, she said back, annoyed, and the front door slammed behind her like a rude end. I rushed to the door just in time to see Laura disappearing into the family car. A sudden wave of fear rose in my chest, not only because she had left without saying anything, but also because of something much more serious: Mom's emergency medicine bag. I always have a full first aid kit, blood pressure, heart, and emergency medications. That small blue bag is always kept in the car's glove compartment, in case my mother suddenly has a seizure while traveling or in places where there are no pharmacies. And now Laura, who was completely unaware of the bag's existence, had taken the car away. My heart was pounding like I had just heard bad news. I quickly turned back into the house. Mom, can I check your medicine bag? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Mom was sitting on the porch reading a book, nodding slightly. I rummaged through my mother's bag, then through my meticulously organized medicine cabinet. All my daily doses were there. Only the emergency bag was gone. A chill ran down my spine. Mom, where did I put my first aid kit? It's not here anymore. My voice started to tremble. My mother looked up, confusion in her eyes. That little green bag? I remember you left it in the car. Yes, Mom. And now Laura's driving away. I almost screamed, fear choking my throat. If Mom had a sudden attack without her medication, the consequences would be dire. My mom's face paled, her eyes filled with worry, mirroring the panic rising in me. My father, who was still reading the newspaper on the sofa, finally realized the seriousness of the situation. What is it, son? He asked, his voice now serious. Laura, take the car. But Mom's medicine bag is still in the car. I don't know where she went or when she'll be back, I said urgently. Dad frowned. Oh my God, this girl. How could she be so careless? He took out his phone and called Laura, but only heard a long, hopeless dial tone. I couldn't wait. Every minute was a potential disaster. I have to go get a replacement, I said firmly. You stay home and watch Mom. But how are you going to get there? We're in the middle of nowhere, at least a few dozen kilometers from town. My father looked at me, his eyes bewildered. I pulled out my phone and searched frantically. Luckily, there was a boat taxi service that took tourists across the lake to the opposite town. I didn't think twice. I'll hire a boat. I have to go now. I rushed to the nearby marina, my heart on fire. The waves lapped against the shore like a pounding drum. I called out, Hey man, can you take me to the nearest town right now? It's urgent. The boatman looked at me in surprise, but when he saw the panic on my face, he nodded. Get on, girl. The boat sped across the lake, leaving behind the wooden house and the anxious heartbeats. The wind blew against my face, cold, but not enough to dispel the tension that was squeezing my chest. I kept looking at the clock, wishing time would pass faster. Laura's careless actions had put my mother in real danger. I felt both anger and bitterness rising in my heart. How could she be so indifferent? How could she ignore everything I had carefully planned? Once again, the responsibility of protecting my mother fell on my shoulders. But this time, it was not just a responsibility, but a life-and-death race against time. After nearly an hour of struggling on the undulating taxi boat, I finally set foot on the small-town pier. The cold wind hit my face, salty and urgent, as if urging me to hurry, to be on time. Without stopping, I rushed through the narrow cobblestone streets, past the deserted shops of the late afternoon. I had only one destination in mind, the small pharmacy at the end of the street, the only place that had any hope of having the medicine my mother needed. As the old wooden door creaked open, my heart pounded with both hope and fear. But luckily, they still had the exact same medicine. A tiny blister pack of pills, which to me was as precious as life itself, lay in the pharmacist's hand. I breathed a sigh of relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from my chest all afternoon. When I returned to the cabin, it was already dark, and I saw the family car parked neatly in front of the door. From inside the house came the sound of light laughter and chatter. Laura had returned. I walked into the house, still clutching the bag of pills, angry and frustrated. Laura was sitting casually on the sofa, fiddling with her phone, next to two large shopping bags with the logos of famous fashion stores. She looked carefree, as if nothing had happened, as if my hasty trip and my fear had never existed. Where are you going, Laura? Do you know what you've done? My voice shook with exhaustion and anger. Laura raised her head, looking surprised. What's so serious? I just went shopping. What's the matter? She shrugged, completely oblivious. What's wrong? I clutched the medicine bag in my hand, holding back the tears that were threatening to fall. I brought my mother's emergency medicine bag and drove all day. If something had happened, she wouldn't have had any medicine to take. Do you know what I had to do to manage? Laura glanced at the medicine bag, then back at me, her eyes starting to harden. Oh my gosh, Mom's not dying. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? I'm sorry if I forgot. You always act like the world is falling apart. Her words were like cold knives. Was I overreacting? Was I controlling? I was just trying to protect my mother, trying to keep things smooth and safe. Yet in my sister's eyes, I was the troublemaker, the one who made things difficult. My father spoke up, trying to calm them down. Come on, you two, stop arguing. Laura, you should be more careful too. Luckily, Mom is okay. But my mother looked at me with warm eyes, then turned to Laura, her voice gentle but firm. Laura, you were really careless. You should apologize to your sister. Laura pouted, her voice full of anger. I already said sorry, but you don't need to make such a big deal out of it. Always controlling, always suffocating others. I stood still. Those words were like a bucket of cold water thrown in my face. I felt like an outsider in my own family, the place that should have been the safest place. I was the one who made the plans, the one who took care of every detail, the one who sweated and cried to keep my mother healthy, and yet I was seen as a nuisance, a shadow that no one wanted to talk about. I just want you to be safe, I choked out. I tried to make this vacation as smooth as possible so you wouldn't have to worry about anything, but you just ruined everything. Laura sneered, her voice mocking. What ruin? Do you think you're the only one who cares about Mom? I love Mom too, but I don't live a forced life like you. The argument continued, growing more heated, but no one was really listening. My parents just wanted peace, wanted everything to go as if nothing had happened. They didn't question why Laura could be so indifferent, or why I had to shoulder all the burden. They just wanted peace. A peace built on injustice, on hurt that no one cared to see. I stood there, alone in the role of the caregiver, the sacrificer, the responsible one. And I saw clearly. No one really understood, no one acknowledged, and no one knew what I had to sacrifice. Inside me was an undercurrent, both angry and hurt. I wanted to keep the peace in my family, but I also wanted to be respected. I could no longer continue to be a patient shadow just because I cared. A boundary has been broken, and I know things will never be the same again. The next morning, the atmosphere in the cabin was noticeably heavy. I avoided Laura as much as possible, finding comfort with my mother or burying myself in preparing meals. I thought the silence would ease the situation, but instead it only made the pressure worse. In the afternoon, while I was helping my mother make tea on the porch, Laura suddenly appeared with her familiar bright smile. Hey Mom, Anna, I have good news. I've invited Mike and Sarah, 2 new friends, to our picnic this afternoon. I almost dropped the cup I was holding. What? Who are you inviting? Without asking anyone, Laura, this is a family vacation. I couldn't hide the shock and annoyance in my voice. I had planned a peaceful picnic by the lake with just Mom, Dad, and us sisters, so Mom could really relax. Laura shrugged, her face expressionless. Oh my gosh, why are you reacting so strongly? It's more fun to have friends. Mike and Sarah are so cute. Mom will definitely like them. My parents just glanced at each other, silent, as if Laura's invitation to invite guests was nothing to talk about. A few hours later, Mike and Sarah showed up. They were a laid-back young couple carrying a large case of beer and a speaker blasting rock music. The quiet Lake Michigan was instantly stirred into a small storm. Hello, everyone. This is my friend Laura, and this is her family, Mike shouted, patting Laura on the shoulder as if he were very friendly. I forced a smile, while my mother was clearly uncomfortable with the music and noise. The picnic quickly devolved into chaos. Mike and Sarah were laughing loudly, offering my dad beers over and over again. They set out salty snack bags and chips right next to the healthy snacks I had carefully prepared for my mom. Mom, try this. It's delicious. Why do you have to abstain so much? Sarah held out a piece of golden fried potato. I immediately intervened. Sarah, your mother can't eat that. My voice was as tense as a string about to snap. Oh, it's not that serious, just eat a little. Mike laughed, then turned to me. By the way, Anna, I heard you're a nurse. Do you believe in folk remedies? I think your illness is probably caused by stress. Just relax and it will go away. I felt the blood rush to my face. Sorry, but my mother's condition is no laughing matter. Heart disease requires serious medical treatment, not superficial natural remedies. Laura immediately interrupted. Stop it, Anna. Why are you so angry? Mom, I think Mike is right. Just relax a bit. Worrying too much is tiring. I looked at my mother. Her face was pale, her eyes tired and confused. Amidst the loud music and laughter, I saw her put her hand to her chest, a familiar gesture when she felt uncomfortable. Mom, how are you feeling? I asked quickly, bending down. I think we should end the picnic here. What is it, Anna? You want to ruin the fun? My friend just arrived. Laura immediately protested. No, Laura, Mom isn't feeling well, I said firmly, then turned to Mike and Sarah. Sorry, but the picnic has to stop here. Mom needs to rest. Mike and Sarah looked at each other, clearly annoyed. What a shame, Sarah said, her tone polite. Just when I thought it would end there, Laura spoke up again. Then Mike, Sarah, you two come back to the cabin with us. We can continue playing there. Don't let Anna ruin our fun. I was stunned. That statement was the last straw. Not only did she disregard my mother's health, but she also invited strangers, with no sense of family privacy, despite all my protests. Anger flared like fire in my chest. I looked at Laura, my eyes filled with deep disappointment. She always called me controlling, but I knew this wasn't control. This was protection. This was love. And I couldn't let anyone, not even my sister, threaten my mother's safety again. Laura's eyes were still challenging, her half smile as if to say, what can I do to you? Mike and Sarah, her two new friends, had started walking toward the cabin, their laughter echoing in the otherwise quiet space. My blood rushed to my head, and I felt I couldn't take it anymore. This wasn't just a ruined vacation. It was a blatant insult to my mother's health, to all the hard work I'd put in, and to the basic respect that existed between family members. Laura, stop! My voice rang out sharply, cutting through the heavy air under the canopy, forcing both my parents and Laura to turn to look. I can't invite them in. They have to leave immediately. Laura spun around. Her face was red, her eyes blazing. What? Who do you think you are ordering me around? They're my friends. You're always controlling, ruining everyone's fun. Her voice was almost a roar, anger seeping out of every word. Ruin? You're the one ruining my vacation, I snapped. You have no respect for Mom, no appreciation for what I've tried to do. She's sick, and you invite these loud, tactless people over who give you reckless, irresponsible advice. They don't care about Mom, and neither do you. I pointed at Mike and Sarah, who were standing a few feet away, their faces showing their displeasure. Mike stepped closer, frowning. What are you talking about? We just want to have fun. Get out of the way, Mike. I kept my eyes on Laura. This is none of your business. Laura immediately rushed forward, standing in front of me like an angry wall, her eyes blazing. You're too much, Anna. You always have to be in control. Do you think you're the boss here? Suddenly, a weak but resolute voice rang out. Enough! Everyone turned. My mother, Susan, was standing there. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady, a rare thing. Laura, you've gone too far. Anna was right. This vacation was supposed to be a time for me to rest. But it's become a burden, a source of stress, because of you. My mother's words hit Laura like a punch. She froze, her angry expression quickly fading, replaced by shock and hurt. My father, Tom, was also stunned. His wife, always evasive, always gentle, now spoke clearly and undeniably. Mom, what are you saying? Laura stuttered, her voice trembling. My mother took a deep breath, trying to calm herself. Laura, you can't be so careless. I understand you want to be happy, but you have to realize your actions are hurting others. especially me. Then she turned to me, her eyes filled with guilt and gratitude. Anna, you've taken on too much. I'm sorry. That apology, though late, made me cry. Not because I was weak, but because my long-standing grievance was finally understood. I turned to Laura, my eyes firm. You heard me. Your friends must leave immediately. And tomorrow morning, so you will leave too. Laura was stunned. Mike and Sarah had quietly returned to the car. She looked at me in disbelief, and my father was bewildered. What did you say, Anna? He asked, his voice shaking with shock. Where are you going? I took a deep breath, determined. I'm going to find somewhere else to live. I can't keep being an invisible caregiver. I'm exhausted. I need time for myself. I need to find myself again. I knew it was a big step. Not only was it leaving the cabin, but it was the first time I put my needs before my obligations, something I had never done before in my life. It was a release, but also a vague fear of what was to come. Laura stood there, speechless. Her eyes were torn between anger and confusion and something close to regret. But I didn't budge. This was the moment I chose to stand up for myself. I packed my things in silence. The small room overlooking the parking lot suddenly felt strangely large, as if everything in it was watching my departure. Mom walked in, her eyes red from a long night of crying. She hugged me tightly, her arms thin but filled with so much suppressed emotion. Son, don't go. I'm sorry. Her voice trembled. I tightened my arms too, feeling the familiar warmth I thought I had lost. But the decision had been made, and this time, I couldn't turn back. Mom, I have to go. I need space to breathe, to think. I can't go on like this, I said, my voice breaking. I'm not going far. I'll call you every day. I promise. Laura stood in the doorway, her eyes as complicated as her heart. There was no anger, no defiance, just confusion and maybe a flicker of regret. But I was too tired to decipher it. I needed to leave, for myself. I left home before dawn. The cool morning air embraced me, carrying with it the scent of pine trees and the strange silence. I found a small inn about 20 miles away. Remote and deserted, just what I needed. The owner, a kindly old man, was waiting for me and handed me the key with a gentle smile. The room was small but cozy, with a window overlooking the quiet woods. The first night passed in a strange calm. No more Laura's loud music, no more Mom's intermittent cough, no more Dad's nagging about little things. There was only the sound of the wind outside the window, the chirping of insects, and a gentle emptiness that enveloped me. For the first time in years, I slept deeply, without dreams, without anxiety. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the curtains, I lay still in bed, quietly gazing at the sky shimmering with the color of leaves. A sense of relief gradually spread through my chest. Only then did I realize how tired I was. I decided to go for a walk. Near the hostel was a nature park with paved trails winding through the old forest. I walked aimlessly, without a phone, without the constraints of time. I simply walked, breathing deeply, listening to the birds chirping and the rustling of leaves under my feet. Every step is a step out of the old cycle. I am healing, little by little. Along the way, I reflected on my place in the family. I used to believe that by taking on everything, I was showing love. But that unacknowledged sacrifice became a shackle, tying me to the role of a professional bearer. And that inadvertently made others, especially Laura and Dad, dependent and irresponsible. I contributed to creating a trap for myself. I did more, they relied more, and in the end, I was completely alone. For the first time, I looked the truth in the face. My worth was not in how much I could do for others, but in who I was, a human being who also needed love, rest, and respect. I sat down on a stone bench under an old tree. The gentle sunlight shone through the leaves, the wind blew gently through my hair, carrying the fresh scent of the forest. I took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. For the first time in years, I felt so peaceful. No more nagging voices in my head. No more invisible criticism. I allowed myself to be vulnerable, to rest, and for the first time in my life, to put myself first. It was a strange, liberating feeling. And in that stillness, I knew that only when I let go of the burdens that didn't belong to me could I truly live for myself. The freedom and peace lasted only 2 days. On Tuesday morning, as I sipped my hot coffee and watched the thin mist drift over the calm lake, the phone rang, shattering the silence. The screen showed my father's number, a rare and unsettling thing, especially at this early hour. "Anna, come home now. Mom." Her blood pressure suddenly dropped. "She's very weak." My father's voice was trembling and panicked. I was stunned. The coffee cup fell to the wooden floor and shattered. "What did you say? Where is Mom? Have you called an ambulance?" I asked quickly, my heart pounding, my head spinning. The fragile peace that had just blossomed suddenly vanished like mist under the harsh sunlight. "I've taken Mom to the town hospital. The one you mentioned. The doctor is examining her. Go home now." Dad's voice was hoarse, mixed with vague fear and regret. I didn't hesitate for a second. I quickly packed my things, paid for the room, and sped down the familiar road back to the cabin, then headed straight to the hospital. On the way, I tried calling Laura, but there was no response. Her irresponsibility was more evident than ever. When I got there, my mother was lying in the hospital bed. Her face was pale, but she was more alert. My father sat beside her, his face haggard, his eyes red from being awake or crying. I rushed to her and hugged her. "Mom, are you okay? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have left you." My voice broke with sobs. Mom weakly stroked my hair. "I'm fine, honey. Luckily, your dad got me to the hospital in time." I turned to my father. "What happened, Father?" My father sighed, his eyes full of guilt. "Last night, your mother was dizzy and had difficulty breathing. I panicked, not knowing what to do. Then I remembered you talking about this hospital, so I brought her here." He hesitated for a moment, then looked at me with a look I had never seen before, a look of recognition and regret. "You were right, Anna. Laura and I were so careless. I didn't realize how weak your mother was, and I left you to bear it all alone." I was stunned. This was the first time my father had acknowledged it in years, something I thought he would never see. "It's okay, Dad, as long as Mom is okay," I said softly, feeling a little relieved. "The doctor said your mother's blood pressure dropped due to stress and irregular diet. She needs to rest, take her medicine on time, and eat a balanced diet," Dad continued. "After you left, Laura disappeared with her friends. I tried to call her but couldn't get through. There was no one left. I had to take care of her myself." His voice dropped. In that moment, I saw helplessness in him, but also something awakening. At that moment, the doctor entered, explaining in detail the condition of my mother, emphasizing the importance of following the treatment regimen. My father sat quietly, listening attentively, taking down every word. No longer the carefree man I once knew, he now seemed to be trying to make up for a responsibility he had forgotten for so many years. "Don't worry, Anna. I will take good care of your mother. I will take care of her medicine and meals on time. You don't have to shoulder everything anymore," he said, his eyes serious and determined. I looked at him. It wasn't just a promise. This time it was action. My father had changed. Even though Laura hadn't returned, even though my wounds hadn't healed, I could feel something shifting. My family began to face reality. My absence had created a void that forced them to act, to look at the injustice that had been done to me, and to realize that I was not someone who could bear it all in silence. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not just as a responsible child, but as a valuable human being. Maybe this wasn't the end of all the hurt, but at least it was a beginning, a necessary beginning to a healthier relationship. And for the first time, I allowed myself to believe it. My mother was discharged that afternoon, and the atmosphere in the cabin changed completely. My father, who had been cold and indifferent, now began to take on real responsibilities. He prepared light meals according to the doctor's instructions, carefully asked if my mother needed to take her medicine, and even sat by her bedside to read to her. The sight moved me and made me feel both moved and relieved. as if something in him had truly changed. That evening, as the three of us were having dinner, the door opened. Laura walked in. Her face was haggard, her eyes red, her gaze lost. I knew she had been crying. She stood still in the doorway, looking at me, then at her parents, her face filled with regret, an emotion I had never seen in her before. "I'm sorry," Laura said, her voice small and shaky. "I'm sorry to everyone. I'm sorry for being so careless, for being so selfish. I didn't realize how much I hurt you, especially Mom and you." For the first time, I heard my sister say a sincere apology. Tears welled up in my eyes again. Without saying anything more, I walked over and hugged her. Laura hugged me too, and we stood there for a long time, as if every misunderstanding, every burden that had been accumulated over the years was slowly being lifted. In the months after our Lake Michigan vacation, our family began to change. Slowly, but surely. Tom was no longer the man who was all about work and his own interests. He became more even-tempered, stopped pampering Laura, and was willing to share the responsibilities of caring for Mom with me. He asked her how she was feeling every day, reminded her when to take her medication, and even sat down with me to plan her weekly meals. Susan's mother also learned to speak up. She no longer suffered silently. When she was tired, she spoke up. When she needed help, she wasn't afraid to ask. And when Laura acted out, she wasn't afraid to call her out. She learned to prioritize her own health and well-being, something she had quietly sacrificed for so many years. Laura, although still impulsive at times, has begun to mature. She takes the initiative to help with housework, sometimes cooking for her mother using healthy recipes I have given her. She asks her mother more questions and especially no longer invites friends home without asking. The relationship between Laura and I has also softened. We talk more, gradually opening up to share our true thoughts and feelings. As for me, I learned the most important lesson, learning to set boundaries. I understood that love does not mean giving yourself up to others. I started making time for myself. Yoga, reading, seeing friends. I still cared about my family, but I no longer let myself get sucked into the endless cycle of responsibilities. I learned to say no when necessary, and to allow others to take charge. The Lake Michigan vacation, which seemed like a disaster, turned out to be a turning point. Sometimes standing up for respect, even if it means being labeled a troublemaker, is the only way to break toxic cycles and rebuild stronger relationships. From a girl who always carried everything in silence, I learned to love myself, set clear boundaries, and contribute to building a family where love is no longer a solitary sacrifice, but a sincere respect and sharing.